When was the last time that you enjoyed a video game? It might not be so long ago, but do you know when the video game was released? It seems that almost all modern games are created solely for the purpose of making you spend a hell of a lot of time on. Constant capture of outposts, endless grinding, and character leveling. Level restrictions prevent me from progressing in the game without additional activities. Games are no longer entertainment, but a second job. But ironically, we pay for this job ourselves. Once upon a time, games were shorter, but more intense. You could finish them in a few nights and remember them for the rest of your life. Today, you spend hundreds of hours and can't even remember what happened in the game a week ago. But how did games created for relaxation begin to exhaust us? Why were games in the past able to entertain us much more in a short time than modern games do in hundreds of hours? Why do we continue to play them? And most importantly, who is to blame for the fact that modern gaming has come to feel like an endless workday? Let's start with a time when completing a game really meant something. Games didn't compete in length, they competed in how much you would experience in a short period of time. Portal lasted a few hours, but it completely changed the perception of game design. BioShock took a couple of days, but its ending remained in your head for years. Even the old God of War or Uncharted 2 worked like an attraction. Concentrated, saturated, without a single wasted minute. Back then, studios didn't think in terms of audience retention. They actually weren't interested in statistics, but in player reactions. If a player is bored, then they won't buy the next installment. But if the game is interesting, however, they will recommend it to their friends. It was a straightforward, honest motivation. Make a game so good that it sells itself. That's why games were short, but dense. And then one game changed everything. It wasn't a hit, it didn't achieve cult status, and even at the time of its release, no one was particularly interested in it. But it was this game that started an era that made the gaming industry what we know it is today. Exhausting, endless, and built around time rather than experience. And it did this simply because it was completely different. Far Cry is definitely my favorite part of the series, and it's not just because I played it when I was still in my father's balls, who was in my grandfather's balls, who sailed in a Higgins boat during the Normandy landings. And to be honest, I don't really understand why my grandfather stormed France in the 80s, but I definitely do understand why Far Cry 2 is a brilliant game, and how unexpectedly for everyone, it changed the future of the entire gaming industry. Far Cry 2 was a rare case where the developers weren't just making a shooter, they were creating a simulation of chaos. Realistic fire spreading through the grass, weapons that actually broke in battle, bullets that got stuck in the body, and the bloody extraction of them from the arm. The world was alive, dangerous, and indifferent to you. The stifling, hot atmosphere made you feel like you were really breathing African dust. And all of this kept you in constant suspense. The only problem was that people didn't like it. Players found the game boring. It was too slow, too gloomy, too real. There was no fun in it. No dozens of icons on the map, no activities at every turn, no colorful dopamine. Just a gloomy picture and a few activities. Although, in fact, this is what we miss today. And Ubisoft, of course, as befits Ubisoft, did the only thing Ubisoft could do. They screwed everything up. They decided that if players didn't want reality, they should be given content. Lots of content. So they released Far Cry 3, a game that didn't just change the series, but completely redefined the entire open world gaming niche. And the problem is that this game was also good because it had a cool storyline, an awesome antagonist, good graphics, and gameplay. We swallowed the outposts, the grind, and the towers. For most of us, it was something new, so why not? But then, the developers decided that this was the reason for the game's success. Although, in fact, all these things just artificially increased the playtime. And from that moment on, Ubisoft successfully invented the most effective way to make a game successful. Forcing you to play not because it's interesting, but because you've already invested too much time into it. After the success of Far Cry 3, Ubisoft did what was probably inevitable. They started cloning themselves. They put all these mechanics into all their franchises, thereby dramatically increasing the amount of similar content and hours of gameplay. The mechanics of outposts, towers, and gradual map clearing became the new standard for Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, and Ghost Recon, all of which received the same structure. The amount of content increased tenfold, but the meaning disappeared. And then this contagion, like a venereal disease, spread from one developer to another, infecting the entire gaming industry as a whole. The best example of this is Mafia 3. The first and second parts were focused, dense stories without unnecessary ballast. Mafia 3, on the other hand, is a giant map with outposts that must be cleared to gain access to subsequent missions. And this is definitely not the development of the series. It is its degradation. Almost all popular franchises have followed a similar path, different in setting, but the same in essence. A huge open world, hundreds of markers on the map, thousands of small activities, most of which are, well, meaningless. Games begin to be measured not by depth, but by area. But this formula had to evolve further. It wasn't enough for the big publishers that were already covered in shit. Now they wanted us to eat it. And someone in a big office realized that you can't just keep a player in the game. You can lock them in there. Activision, EA, Blizzard, and the Nazis were the first to realize that players can be kept captive. All evil begins with the desire to control. Almost every competitive online game is designed not for you to win, but for you to come back tomorrow. Fortnite, Call of Duty, Overwatch, Apex Legends, and Valorant, all these games work on the same principle. They don't let you win, they give you this habit, and every element in them is subordinated to this goal. Everything is designed so that you don't leave. Battle Pass has replaced story endings. To get skins, you have to play every day. Miss a day, and you're behind. Miss a week, and you can start over. Games no longer feel like entertainment. They feel like work with deadlines. And what's worse is that you don't even see it as working. Because the reward system is designed so that every minute gives you a small, quick dopamine rush. Every victory is small, but noticeable. You get a higher MMR, or rating, or new weapon skins. In short, any useless shit you don't need, which is why you stay. Developers no longer compete with each other on the quality of the game. They just fight for your attention. This is the main change in the industry. We no longer buy games, we rent our time. Streamers and esports in general have just added fuel to the fire. It has become somehow wrong to play for yourself. Now, if you don't sweat, don't try hard, and have a low rank, you're a loser, stupid, an idiot, smelly, and you deserve to die. We stay up at night just to not lose our rating. And instead of relaxation, we get emotional burnout, anxiety, aggression, and the feeling that we're not good enough, even at our hobby. What the fuck is this? What the fuck are we doing to ourselves? Tell me when I was a child in the future that I would force myself to play the same game, do the same actions, just to get bigger numbers next to my nickname. What has happened to us people? Nah, in fact, what has happened to you, son? What's happened to you? What was once a place to escape reality has now become its continuation. I remember playing Mafia 2 during the Christmas holidays as a child. Snow was falling outside the window, and in the game too. The old monitor glowed with a warm yellow light, the speakers crackled with 50s jazz, and I just felt good. I didn't think about levels, upgrades, battle passes, or skins. I just walked down the snow-covered streets of Empire Bay, listened to the snow crunching under my feet, and caught that same feeling we used to play for. Not for the reward, not for the progress, just because it was interesting to live in this little world. Today, there are almost no such moments left. And maybe that's why we remember those old games so often. Because back then, they weren't an escape from reality, but the smallest life itself.